All right. So,
So, what's the best things about being homeless?
Well, you meet a lot of people and you
yeah.
develop relations. And I'm not talking about homeless people,
Or just
but
being displaced. Yeah.
you can meet a lot of people. I think the people I've never I've never begged, but I think the beggars meet a lot of people, and I see people talking with them, and I think it's probably a good thing for both parties. So that, in other words, the people that are sitting out there, Alistair, for example, the Scotsman from Aberdeen, who was such a classic Scotsman and could do any number
Really?
of things. Yeah, but
Is he
people.
still around?
Oh yeah, he's
Yeah.
over by the Harvard bookstore.
Oh yeah. I think
Um,
I know him.
but I often see people talking with Jade, who is the alcoholic, who's such a beautiful woman, such a lovely, kind, gentle person, but she has a problem with alcohol. She had a problem with drugs. She had a problem with her boyfriend. He's gone now. She's got another one. I should imagine she'll never laugh at that. But
The one at Harvard store, is it he always holding a tiny ukulele?
yes, yes,
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
And he's from Scotland,
Oh, really?
and he has a Scottish accent,
Uh huh.
and he has a Scottish way about him, but he's very polite,
Mm-hmm.
and I mean you can imagine him
And he's
any number
devoted
of
to his instrument. I always see him learn how to play it.
well, it would be interesting to interview him.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I think if you would interview him, he might tell you a little bit. He
Maybe.
told
Mm-hmm.
he was. I mean, I had no trouble speaking with him,
Mm-hmm.
so I would imagine that that's the case, and that's true for a lot of homeless people. I'm a more outgoing person. I mean,
George, you're not
and
outgoing, are you?
especially well, more. I have, shall we
You're
say,
personable.
personable.
Yeah.
I uh, I have always had a relationship with Harvard
Oh,
that
that's what I want to
most
ask you.
other people lack insofar as my father and my daughter both graduated from Harvard. I've always had, uh, shall we say, something of a Harvard influence. My father, especially, having received the alumni bulletin and all the many good things that we did. I mean, when the Glee Club came to Chicago, we went to see them, the Harvard Glee Club. It's really quite something to see.
How are the Harvard students with the homeless around town? How are they by and large? Do they?
Well, I don't know. I can't. I don't think you can generalize. I mean, I know
I'm.
that the
Yeah. Well.
University Lutheran Shelter at 66 Winthrop Street is manned exclusively by Phillips Brooks Harvard students. So, in other words, students have an opportunity to volunteer at Phillips Brooks House in 83 different activities, one of which is the homeless shelter. And those that volunteer at the homeless shelter have included, among others, Cheryl Kara Sandberg. So what I'm saying is, I
Right.
probably
And you
never
knew
in a
her,
thousand
did you?
years would have met Cheryl, but
Yeah.
every morning
Right.
for 6 months, I
Right.
mean, or for 3 months, I would wake up and there was Cheryl. And I mean, if you understand, what that means in terms of
Has Facebook
understanding.
has Facebook done anything with regard to the homeless situation? Do you know? Or
Well, I think Facebook does a lot of things just by virtue of it being Facebook. I mean, Facebook provides communication opportunities that, without parallel, they don't yet do translations. And for that matter, finding me on Facebook is pretty hard because it's strange. If you enter my name,
yeah.
you
Yeah.
don't get my Facebook page. I don't know quite why, and I intended to find out more about it. But I use an abbreviation of my first name, so that may be partially why. But you'd think with the last name, all I get is Greek last names. I mean, all I get is people in Greece
Okay.
with the
All right.
name Despodes, and then
Yeah.
maybe a couple of other people. But there aren't a lot of Despodes in America yet.
Not yet.
I
You're
mean,
working
I've
on
certainly got four grandchildren, so
it.
I imagine some of them, only two of which will have the name Despodes. So
What was she like when she was working at the with the?
she was and I was very supportive of her basic premise that women are underutilized, and that is to say that the glass ceiling exists. I mean, how to put it appropriately, underutilized. I'm always looking at people as being, contributors to the advancement of civilization. And insofar as that's the case, women don't have a chance to do that.
as
As
much
I
as
mean,
much.
very rarely do you have a chief executive. It's getting less rare. In other countries, it's almost impossible to imagine a Chinese woman who is head of a company. I
Uh,
mean,
I
is
don't
that
know.
is that true?
Is that true, show?
Sorry,
What's it
I
like
was
Tai
trying
Tai
to.
in Taiwan?
Can you
Is it
can you say it again?
S
A
S?
Chinese chief executive officer who is woman, who's a
Hmm.
woman, is that possible?
Yeah, it's possible.
It happens.
Hmm.
Well, so things are.
Well, but there will be some rumors if like how she become that and then
She may be the daughter of the.
what things she has done to become like that.
So
So
it's
Well, Catherine Beach was, I think, the first woman president of an aircraft company, but she was related, obviously, with the name
right.
Beach.
Yeah, right.
So, I mean, a lot of times that's the way women become CEOs.
Well, this is
But,
how she herself married the founder of Facebook, right? But she was,
well,
yeah,
Cheryl is chief operating officer,
yeah, right.
but she didn't marry Mark Zuckerberg.
Oh,
Mark is
oh,
married to
okay.
Priscilla Chan,
Oh,
who
yeah,
is
that's right.
Chinese,
Okay. Oh, right.
And Mark
well,
learned
she's more
Chinese.
like Asian American.
Well, she's more like Asian
All
American,
right.
and she's a doctor too. She's a pediatrician, and
Yeah.
she's pregnant, and she hasn't delivered yet, but probably will soon.
Jeez, you know everything, George. You
No,
know
I
more
don't
than I
know
do.
when. Well, a lot of stuff is on Wikipedia, but
Yeah.
I tried to find Priscilla's birth date, and I couldn't.
All right.
So Mark's birth date is there, and Cheryl's is there, and anyway, all I can remember is that Bill Gates' birthday is October 28th.
Right. October 20th. And he went to Harvard too.
Of course.
They were both Harvard dropouts, right?
Right.
Yeah.
As was Edwin Land, who created the Polaroid Land camera,
Yeah.
and Polaroid went BK, and now there's,
What
there's
other
soon,
famous Harvard dropouts are there?
well, Mark Zuckerberg, Bill Gates, Edwin Land, I mean, those three immediately come to mind.
Right.
But there are others, and if you understand what that implies about, there are probably dropouts who didn't achieve
Yeah.
greatness and who might have achieved greatness if they hadn't dropped out. Um,
And
and
the
so what I'm
converse
saying is, if
is
someone drops out of Harvard because of, shall we say, not being supported adequately or appropriately, it's a source of concern.
hmm,
I mean, I'm not saying that necessarily Mark or Bill would have achieved what they've achieved if they hadn't dropped out. I mean, that's something no one could ever say. But on the other hand, it's interesting to consider what might have happened if they hadn't dropped out.
and the converse is true. You were mentioning that people who have MBAs, as you do, can end up being homeless too. So
Exactly.
a degree doesn't
A
protect you.
degree doesn't protect you.
Yeah, and it doesn't make you either. It doesn't necessarily make you,
Right.
right? I mean, so people who are going for degrees for the sake of a degree, maybe it's a good thing, but it's not a protection against and look at Peter Jennings. He never went to college, and he always regretted never having gone to college, but he made it quite.
I think a case can be made that education is really a very positive thing, and that it is a good thing to get a degree if at all possible. Obviously, in the case of Bill or Mark, they had an idea that really, was preemptive in terms of their time, and I think that is primarily the reason that they dropped out because
Hmm.
they needed
The
the time
to
to
develop.
develop
Yeah.
things. Um, and it might have been the case if they hadn't dropped out that nothing would have gotten off the ground.
Right.
But and it's so fascinating to me because Bill Gates went to Albuquerque, New Mexico.
Yeah.
Maybe you know the story, and worked at the high school there because they gave him computer time.
No, I didn't know that.
Yeah, so well, there's a company called Sandia there, which is a think tank of sorts and high tech.
Uh-huh.
And so the full story of how that happened, there was a book about Bill Gates that I read maybe 20 years ago.
Uh-huh.
Uh, I think it was called "Where Are You Going Today" or something like that. But and I haven't been able to find it, but I'm going to keep. That reminds me. I'll try to look again. But it told a little bit about how he left Harvard to go to New Mexico, where the high school offered him computer time that he apparently could not have gotten here, which
Really?
is not inconceivable because computer time at one time was
It's
a
highly
very, very expensive
expensive.
thing.
Right.
And it was restricted pretty much to people who were, like postdocs, graduate students, if you understand what I mean. You need only go to the Science Center
Yeah.
and see the size of the 1944 computer that today is all that and more is much more is contained in your hand.
Right.
So I mean, there's been spectacular developments in terms of that, and also in terms of communication. What there hasn't been is easy translation, and that's what this company Nuance, a guy at Harvard, Paul Bamberg, who teaches at the extension, started something called Dragon Systems, which was an early translation um, program. But I have yet to see, and I mean, Nuance is supposed to do that. I'm not sure exactly what I've seen in terms of, translate this, it doesn't happen. I mean, you're on Facebook and someone, all your friends are speaking Portuguese to each other, and it says underneath, translate this,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
and it doesn't happen. So my guess is that
Well, you can do
there's
that
a
on Facebook, though. It can
you
translate.
you can do it maybe, but I mean the question is, will it? It doesn't happen for me. I mean, I press the translate,
Yeah.
and I get the same thing. I don't get the translation. So in other words, I think the translation programs are as yet not very effective. Certainly with Facebook, that may be the case. Um, it's not like you have the World Series and who's got the best and like the breakthrough prize for the
Mm,
best.
mm.
I mean, nobody has really focused on translation as a quintessential human need, and it is. I mean, it is because, like talking to this Algerian Portuguese offender in France.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if his, shall we say, knowledge of French or ability to understand French was facilitated by a translation system, then he may not have become so estranged.
Mm.
I mean, you can imagine his father is Algerian,
Mm.
and the Algerian relations with France back in the 70s were, shall we say,
Strange,
less
to
than
say.
amicable. That was a war.
Yeah.
I mean, the Foreign Legion. You know how the French are in terms of that. So, I mean, here he's carrying around this baggage that his father has bequeathed to him of,
Yeah.
this relationship, that Arab relation with France. And I mean, you can imagine how his father certainly may have had no love lost for France. I
Mm.
mean, so it's fascinating to think of that. Anyway, Thanksgiving is coming up. I want to wish all you students a happy Thanksgiving. I hope you'll look it up in the encyclopedia. It is a quintessential American holiday, which, according to the Americana Encyclopedia, is even more celebrated than Christmas. It was first declared by President Lincoln, but was celebrated before for years, ever since 1620 on different dates. And
So it was officially designated by President
by
Lincoln.
President Lincoln in I
And
believe it was 1863. And it is, of course, in some sense, a religious holiday, but it's not really a religious holiday in quite the sense that Christmas or Hanukkah or one of those are. The
well,
other thing is, of course,
it's an American religion. It's an
happy
American.
Happy Diwali, which is just passed, and particularly made me happy to see a Diwali poster at McDonald's. So, in other words, McDonald's, as in so many other ways, has recognized that there are other people in the world, and we ought to certainly acknowledge and celebrate with them.
Now, Thanksgiving was in October for many, many years, wasn't it? Until FDR changed it to November. Is that correct?
Uh, well, you would probably know more about that than I.
I think it was during the war. They wanted when the soldiers come home to celebrate Thanksgiving and Christmas together with the family. So they moved it to November, and
Really? Then why don't they move the Thanksgiving to December?
well, they want some separation.
Oh, okay.
It's the last weekend, and
You know, I recall reading in the Americana. The Americana is one of the two encyclopedias, the other being the Britannica. And I haven't looked up Thanksgiving in the Britannica.
it's not there.
My oh, it probably is. It probably is. But anyway, my roommate, that is to say, the person that with whom I was staying before I was kicked out, he's got an Americana, and you can buy one online actually used for $500, probably more with time because they don't make them anymore. But that article, as I recall, said that Lincoln designated the last Thursday, and then it was changed by President Roosevelt to the fourth Thursday. As
Oh,
for
I see. That's the
October,
change. Oh,
yeah.
okay. That's the change.
So I am. So you're perhaps incorrect about that. But
Yeah,
I could be
I
incorrect.
probably am.
Yeah. So we should.
It's
I
the
should look
Canadians
into
who
it.
have it in October.
Well,
It's
yeah, and that's a good reason to go to Canada too.
have two Thanksgivings, one in Canada, one in here. Why not? Get as many as you can.
You
All
know, I
right.
bet the Canadian Thanksgiving.
Any last words, show?
Last words, no.
Last words? How do you say thank you in Chinese? Thank you, 谢谢. And how do you say happy Thanksgiving in Chinese?
感恩节快乐。
快乐
Kuai
is happy and healthy is
健康。
健康快乐.
Yeah.
Okay.